It was the last crossing of the night, 11:40 p.m., when a passenger walked on with no car, no bag, and no ticket. I didn't stop him. Something told me not to. He stood at the stern the entire crossing, facing the water. When we docked, I turned to tell him we'd arrived. The stern was empty. Before I tell you what the harbor cameras showed, because there's footage, and it doesn't make sense, you need to understand something about the last ferry crossing of the night. It's short. 12 minutes, dock to dock, across open water with nowhere to go except into the water itself. There's no side exit. No second deck to hide on. Just the car deck, the passenger cabin, and the open stern. A person cannot simply not be on the boat anymore. There's nowhere else to be. I'd operated that ferry route for almost 6 years, a small crossing, maybe a 15-minute run each way, servicing an island community of a few hundred people. The last crossing of the night is usually empty, or close to it. Most nights I'm the only one on board besides whoever's working the dock on the other side. I saw him walking down the ramp as I was doing my final pre-departure check, alone, no vehicle behind him, no luggage. Foot passengers aren't unusual on that route. Plenty of islanders don't drive, but foot passengers still need a ticket, and our system logs every boarding electronically when someone taps in at the gate. He didn't tap in. I noticed that, actually looked over at the gate reader, confirmed it hadn't registered anything, and I still didn't stop him. I want to be honest about that part. I've thought about it a lot since. I just felt like letting it go was the right call in the moment, the way you sometimes just know not to make something into a bigger deal than it needs to be. He walked straight past the cabin, out to the open stern deck, and stood at the railing facing the water. He stayed there the entire crossing, 12 minutes, in November, no coat, completely still. I checked on him twice through the cabin window, mostly out of basic courtesy, the kind of thing you do for any passenger standing outside in cold weather. Both times, he hadn't moved an inch. Same posture, same position, facing straight out over the water like he was watching for something specific. When we approached the dock, I stepped out to let him know we'd arrived, standard practice for anyone who might not notice we'd docked. The stern was empty. My first thought was that he'd gone back inside without me noticing, gotten off through the cabin while I was focused on docking procedures. Reasonable enough. I checked the cabin. Empty. I checked the car deck. Empty. I checked every square foot of a boat that's maybe 60 feet long, with nowhere left to search. Then I checked the dock camera from the other side, the one that films every single person walking off that ferry, no exceptions. It showed something I still can't explain. The dock camera at the arrival side is required by our operating permit. It timestamps every boarding and every departure, mainly for safety audits and insurance purposes. I've pulled that footage dozens of times over the years for routine reasons, nothing dramatic. I knew exactly where to look. The footage showed the ferry docking. It showed me stepping off to secure the ropes. It showed absolutely no one else disembarking, not through the passenger walkway, not through the vehicle ramp, nowhere. But it also showed something else, something I only caught because I slowed the footage down frame by frame after the first pass didn't make sense. In the wide shot of the stern deck, taken from the dock camera's angle just before we finished docking, there's a stretch of about 4 seconds where the railing where he'd been standing looks different. Slightly warped, almost like heat distortion on a summer road, except it was November, near freezing, with no possible heat source anywhere near that railing. I called the dispatch office immediately, half expecting them to tell me I was seeing things, that camera footage does weird things sometimes in cold weather, condensation on the lens, anything ordinary. The dispatcher who picked up went quiet for a moment before saying something that made my stomach drop harder than the missing passenger already had. Was it the guy who doesn't tap the gate? I asked her what she meant by that. She hesitated, the way people hesitate when they're deciding whether something is worth explaining or easier to just brush off. Then she told me to come in for the morning shift change instead of going home, because there was something in the incident log she needed to show me in person. What she pulled up when I got there was an internal incident log, not the official safety reports filed with the Harbor Authority, just a running notes file that ferry operators had apparently been keeping informally among themselves for years, passed down through shift handoffs rather than any official channel. 6 separate entries, spanning back almost 15 years, all describing the same thing. A foot passenger, always on the last crossing of the night, always boarding without tapping the gate reader, always standing at the stern facing the water for the entire trip, and always gone by the time the boat docked. No name ever given, no clear description beyond, a man, dressed for another season, which matched almost exactly what I remembered about the coat he wasn't wearing. Every operator who'd logged an encounter had noted the same detail at the end of their entry, word for word similar enough that it read like each person had heard it from whoever trained them rather than discovering it independently. The entry always ended with some version of the same instruction: don't try to speak to him. Don't try to stop him from boarding. Just finish the crossing like normal, and let him go. I asked the dispatcher what happened if someone didn't follow that instruction. She said she genuinely didn't know, that in 15 years of logged entries, nobody had apparently ever tried to find out, and she wasn't eager to be the first person to ask that question out loud, let alone test it. I want to tell you I never saw him again after that first night. That would have been the easier version of this story. 3 weeks later, on another late crossing, he boarded again, same time, almost to the minute. Same lack of a coat, same silence, same walk straight past the cabin to the stern railing without acknowledging me at all. This time, knowing what I knew, I didn't check on him through the window. I didn't approach the stern. I just ran the crossing exactly the way the informal log had instructed, normal procedure, no attempt at conversation, no attempt to stop him. When we approached the dock, I didn't step outside to announce our arrival, the way I normally would. I stayed in the cabin and watched through the window instead, waiting to see what would happen if I simply let the crossing finish without interrupting it. I watched him standing there right up until the moment the boat's bow touched the dock. In the same instant the hull made contact, not a second before, not a second after. The stern deck was simply empty. I didn't look away. I didn't blink at the wrong moment. One instant he was there, and in the very next, he wasn't, timed so precisely to the docking impact that it didn't feel random at all. It felt like a rule being followed. I checked the dock camera footage again afterward, mostly out of habit at this point rather than genuine surprise. Same result as before, no one disembarking, no anomaly beyond a few frames of that same faint distortion around the railing. I've talked to 2 of the operators who wrote entries in that old log, both retired now, both willing to talk once they realized I wasn't going to treat it like a joke. Neither of them could tell me who he was, or why the last crossing specifically, or why the water. One of them had a theory, nothing confirmed, nothing official, just something he'd heard secondhand decades ago about a ferry accident on that same route long before any current operator's time, back when the boats and the safety standards were very different from what we run today. He wouldn't tell me more than that. Said it wasn't his story to tell, and that some things are better left as an instruction passed quietly between operators than as a full explanation nobody could actually confirm anyway. I still run that route. He's boarded 4 more times since that first night, always the last crossing, always without warning. I follow the instruction now, every time, without exception. I don't check on him. I don't step outside early. I just finish the crossing. And every time, at the exact moment we dock, the stern is empty. I still run the last crossing every night. I just don't check the stern anymore until we're already docked. If your job has ever given you a night you can't explain, we want to hear it. The link to submit your story is in the description. Someone else takes the wheel tomorrow. Subscribe so you're there for it.